Stream is on. We are live. It's only me here, of course. But yeah, um, as you can see, the setup is a little bit different. I will explain as soon as people hopefully maybe discover this live stream and join the chat. Um, I can't remember now if I made it in the set, if I clicked on the things in the settings so that only people who are subscribed to this channel can join the chat. I hope I did. Maybe I didn't, but I'll keep going. Yeah, so people have discovered this live stream. Wonderful. Hi there, Angela. Um, I hope that you're all having a wonderful morning or evening, late evening. Uh, yeah, I woke up here with a headache, of course. I'm in a hotel room. I'm in Spain for the day. And yeah, it's a book promotion thing. That's why I also have my Viking clothes on. But I thought, since I wake up early, that I would do a live stream and talk about something that I think is quite important, something that we should be aware of. It will be happening in all countries, I believe. So let's see here. Yeah, let's see how many people have joined. 34 as per now. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be quite a day. I have on the schedule there 14 interviews. 14 interviews today. Yeah. So I am happy about that. Of course, it's wonderful. The Spanish publisher has done a good job setting up arranging everything. So yeah, but it's going to be. I'll be quite tired after that, I guess. But yeah, my books will soon be available in Spanish. But okay. I put in the title, your government will hide behind the civilians. And you, that's you, right? And let's just okay. So that's a statement there, okay. And some people will say, no, they would never do that. We have the military, we have the fighting forces, and all of that. Okay. And then they point at typically now you will hear the murderers in the Israeli government pointing at Gaza, and they will say that, well, we can't get rid of Hamas without killing civilians. Sorry, because they are hiding behind civilians. And that's probably true. I mean, Hamas, I don't think they care about their own people. They're a terrorist organization. And if they have to see some people, I mean, Palestinians getting killed just so that they can keep fighting against Israel, they would do it. They do not have ethics or morals. So I mean, they are terrorists. Yeah, I'm in a hotel room. So that's like I think most people can see that, most people can agree on that. And your government would never do anything like that, right? Your government would never use civilians as shields, would they? They would never put civilians in front of them, would they? Well, just recently here in Norway, and this I'll use Norway as an example. I don't know the details concerning other countries, but probably pretty much the same is happening in many other countries, and we'll probably get to the USA as well. But in Norway recently, most of the political parties, they found that it was okay to implement a new law, a crisis law, which can be applied whenever the government decides to. If they decide that this is a crisis, they will apply the law, and that law would set aside all other laws, and they would be able to order people out of their work, out of their homes, and into, assigned positions in society. So, for instance, let's say you're, well, like me, I'm an author, and they could then just, I guess, send me a message or phone me up and say that you are going to be at the front fighting the Russians now, or you are going to be at the front line there building bridges or whatever. This is, and also it will be punishable by 3 years in prison if you refuse. And also part of that was that all medical details, everything would be available to the people in power. So what does that look like? And this is not me. I have to. It's this angle. This was presented in a Norwegian podcast lately, and I can't remember the name of the woman who said this, but she is correct. Okay, so what does this look like? Just ordering civilians into functions that will be beneficial, I guess, in, for instance, a war or violent attack on your nation. What does that look like? To me, it looks a lot like what Hamas is doing. And that's what this woman said as well. And you would get civilians killed. Civilians would be acting as shields in front of the government, in front of those people who are enforcing that law. Okay. Now, I hope people can get the point here. This should not be difficult to grasp. We point at Hamas, and rightly so, they're using the civilians as shields. But please do not think that your own government is above that. Because they will use you as a shield. They will use their own civilians as shields if they have to, if they feel like it. So if your government has implemented or planning to implement something like this, something along these lines, you can bet on, you put good money on, don't bet, but it's a saying, right? that they will be using civilians as shields. This is also useful in times of war, because they can say that, look at the evil, well, in this case, Russians killing civilians. Do I think that the regime in Moscow cares about how many civilians they are killing? No, I don't think so. I don't think they care. But your own government would be able to use that in their propaganda. Your government will use just common people as cannon fodder. Oh yeah, you just said cannon fodder there. Now, some of the smaller political parties in Norway, they protested against this, and they actually managed to convince the other political parties, or not all of them, but enough of them, so that this law was halted. It did not pass for now. But this is coming. This is coming. And yeah, Ukraine is a very good example, because from the moment they implemented that law there, where the regime in Ukraine, they said no fighting age male can leave the country. At that point, I refused from that point and onwards. I refused to call them a legend. No, what's the word? They might have been democratically elected, but no, I'm looking for a word here. Legitimate. Yeah, they are autocratic. They use their civilians. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. So this is something that we should be aware of, and I've always said, and it seems like people need to be reminded of this more and more often, that the most dangerous ideology is statism. You can also say that the most dangerous ideology is any ideology when it ignores empathy and justice and fairness. If the ideology becomes more important than that, then it's dangerous. It doesn't matter if it's socialism or some kind of theocracy or whatever it is. Well, it does matter, but in this case, if it becomes more important than justice, sense and reason, empathy, it's dangerous. So they managed to make it so that law did not pass here in Norway for now. But I listened to debates after it did not pass, because what they do with these laws is that they try to get them through without any noise, right? They try to get it through without people knowing. So the debate here was after it was it did not pass, and I was shocked. I shouldn't say shocked, because nothing shocks me anymore, but I was very saddened to hear those politicians who were still defending this law. You have to have blind trust in your government and in all future governments in order to think that that amount of power, that a government should have that amount of power. There's a reason why you have like in what there is a term in English, I know, but in a democracy you have power on, you have the lawmaking part. You have the no, never mind. It's too early. But the point here is that the power is not on one hand. It's spread out. That's what it how it needs to be. But it's not like that anymore because the media, they just do whatever the narrative tells them to do. When it comes to the USA, it's I'll get into this a little bit because it's we have a lot of people from the USA in the chat and listening. I don't care if it's a MAGA Republican or a Democrat or whatever in the White House so much. I really don't care. I do care about how much power is concentrated in that office, Oval Office. And it seems like now there's a lot of power concentrated on one person's, in one person's hand. That is a problem. That's a massive problem. The USA is looking more and more like an autocracy. An autocracy is where basically, one person decides. And you put aside, you set aside the democracy. And it might look like people are getting their freedoms back and so on right now. But you have to look at the process, you have to look at what's really going on there. From the outside, it doesn't look good now. I still think, and this is a very controversial opinion, I still think that Trump is the best option out of the two options that were concerning the risk of nuclear war in Europe. Basically because he plays along with Putin up until now. We'll see what happens now, but that's kind of beside the topic of this video. But I hope I'm not wrong there. But what seems to be the case is that democracy is set aside and you have autocracy in the USA. Now this ties into what I'm talking about here actually. Because obviously in an autocracy you have typically a big state. It doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be big in the sense that the budget, but it's big in the sense that it just wields a lot of power over its people. And one example of that is like people have been, I think, instructed or encouraged to report of anti-Christian bias on their workplace. That sounds to me a lot like communist China, you know, and it just seems wrong what's happening now. It just seems wrong, and I think that you have to look at what's happening with the democracy. Now, people will say that, oh, the USA is not a democracy and so on. So, because they have a constitution. Well, most countries have a constitution, you know. The democratic process matters. If you set that aside, you're going to have some problems in the future. What if the USA goes to war? What if the USA is attacked? What if, you know, I don't know. The USA is protected by a sea on both sides, so that's good, you know. But yeah, I think that what could be the problem in the USA is not attack by a foreign force, but an overreaching government. And it seems like that's where it's heading. I think it's obvious. Let's see here. Yeah. Yeah, India and Pakistan. I know I've kind of been traveling since that took off. So yeah. But anyway. Yeah, I wish I could have been more optimistic and hopeful. I don't like talking about this. I don't like it. I just want to sit on my porch and look at the trees and the birds, honestly. I don't ask for much. But it seems that seems like that's not what they want us to do now. They want us to be scared. They want us to have a clear image of an enemy. And yeah. Okay. Someone's knocking on the door. I have to go. Okay. Have a nice evening or morning, whatever it is. How do I get out of this? Let's see here. Is this that one? Hold on.